Good morning. Welcome to the first in our Move to Spain virtual roadshow webinar series. Today, we aim to explain what's required to move to Spain in terms of visas, applying for residence, as well as explain some of the other bureaucracy involved if you move to Spain. We will also go over the main practicalities you'll need to deal with, including accessing healthcare, opening bank account, driving, getting connected, and those sort of things. I'm Nigel Ayres, and I run Expat Network. I've lived in Hong Kong, Malaysia, and the US during my career and moved to Spain 2.5 years ago. I've made my fair share of mistakes. I've made my moves as I made my moves, and during the course of today and the rest of the webinars, I'll explain what I've done wrong and hope that you will not repeat them. We are joined here by Joanne Alderton of Aldertons, who are property finders and provide a wide range of relocation support services, including helping people to obtain their visa and working their way through the bureaucracy. Before we start, perhaps if you just note that if you want to ask any questions, there's a button on your screen and you can submit those and we will answer them if we can during the course of the webinar. If not, we'll follow up by email after the event. So over to you then. Joanne, perhaps we could start by telling us a bit about yourself, about Aldertons and the areas that you cover.
Yep, hi everybody. I am Joanne Alderton. I am the owner of Aldertons of Spain. We are based in the northern Costa Blanca on the east coast of Spain. Have been in operation for the past 7-8 years now over here. Prior to that, like Nigel, I'm a bit of a gypsy. I have lived in Mexico, Cuba, Sri Lanka, all over Spain, every island that Spain owns. I have lived and found this area to be the place that I needed to put my roots down. So basically, I'm very, very experienced in setting up shop and basically setting roots down in these places, and turned my experience into my career. I'm a qualified immigration expert. I studied at the University CEF, which is an online university in Spain, and qualified in Spanish immigration. So I'm perfectly placed to answer all of your questions with regards to residency, especially for our UK customers, who it's a very big difference from how it used to be pre-Brexit days. So yeah, this is me in a nutshell, and we are. I have a team of 8, and we're very happy to answer any questions that you have with regards to moving to this beautiful corner of the world. Okay.
Thanks, Joanne. Okay, let's start off by looking at the immigration visa requirements as they are now. For the short stays, all non-EU citizens, which now includes Brits, of course, are subject to the requirements of the Schengen visa. For Brits, it's not necessary to apply for a visa, but you have to abide by the rules, and that is, you can spend 90 in 180 days. And I see many questions about that, but basically the way I see it is, if you look back 180 days, within that 180 days, you must not have been here for more than 90 days. And that is a rolling period. So as each day goes off the back of that, then you get another day at the front end. So it's just a rolling 90 and 180 days. How do the authorities monitor whether people are in compliance, Joanne? Is it your understanding it's being enforced, and are there sort of penalties for doing it?
Absolutely. It's not as in force as it will be at the moment, but it's very definitely in force. It's the Schengen zone. Okay, so it's not just Spain. So if you go online and Google Schengen, and that'll give you the areas that fall into the Schengen zone. And basically, it's monitored by, at the moment, the wet stamp in the passport. So when you come through passport control, the passport guy, the border force, will stamp your passport. And when you come into Spain or anywhere into the Schengen zone, when you stamp the passport, there'll be a little arrow and it's pointing inwards into the little box that they stamp. And when you leave, there's a little arrow pointing out. So that's in and out. And at the moment, it's all down to them counting those days. So that's why I say it's not as enforced as it should be. But don't rely on the fact that you could get away with it, because there are cases, and I've dealt with them personally, there are cases of people overstaying the welcome and being turned around and sent back on the way. And it's down to you to pay for your flight back. Or it's down to the air company that has accepted you for travel, and they have to repatriate you. Now, in the course of 2023, the biometrics are coming in, and that's the little golden tag on the front of your passports. The biometrics are automatically read as soon as they're scanned, and that will flag up immediately whether you're an overstayer. So that's the time to get your affairs in order. And if you have overstayed those 90 days, it will flag up immediately and you'll be denied entry immediately. So that's going to be rolled out very, very quickly through the entire Schengen zone. Some airports haven't got it installed yet. So again, it's going to be a slow process through the different areas. And this, again, isn't just Spain, it's the whole of Europe or the whole of the Schengen area. But yeah, it is rolling out, and that will flag up immediately. So bear that in mind.
Okay, and in terms of penalties, there's a fine. Do you get any ban on being able to enter?
Yes.
The Schengen?
Yeah. It's down to the individual guard, but it's upwards of 3 years. Up to 3 years denied entry. Depends on your record. So if you're a criminal, if you're a repeated offender, you can be banned for life. But it can be you're just denied entry for those 90 days, or it can be you're denied entry for up to 3 years. It can be denied entry and a €10,000 fine. There are a number of different fines that can happen depending on whether he's got out of bed and it's a Tuesday and he's got out on the left-hand side as opposed to the right-hand side. It all depends on your attitude, so it is what it is. And just don't take the chance. Be aware of what your rights are and be aware of what your responsibilities are, and just don't try and play the game. So stick to your 90 days in every 180.
Right. Okay. Many thanks. Okay. So we move on then to longer stays. If people want to stay longer than 90 days, what are their options? And I guess those vary on the basis of why the people are coming here and so on.
Yeah, so if you want to be here for 90 days or for over 90 days, then that's a case of declaring some type of residency. You don't have a choice. You either are 90 days, go back for 90 days, come out for 90 days, go back for 90 days, or you declare some type of residency. And the way that you get past that residency, there's no magic wand. You can't get an extended visa for another 3 or 4 weeks unless you are ill, and that's quite severely ill. Or unless there's extremely extenuating circumstances, in which case you have to go to the national police and plead that case, and that is extremely difficult. That would be some type of, extreme immigration plea. So that's when you need a human rights lawyer or something like that. So there's nothing that's going to fall into that category on a day-to-day basis. The only way that you can extend that, as I've just said, is some type of residency visa. So that's going to be a non-lucrative visa, a golden visa, a work permit, a student visa, a self-employed visa, or a freelancer visa, which is a self-employed visa. There is a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel, which I'll go into a little bit later on. But at the moment, as it stands right today, there isn't anything around that at all. There's lots of on the forums and things out there, people saying that you can extend your visa for 6 months and things. You can't. It doesn't exist. Nothing out there exists for that. A family reunification, it doesn't exist unless you have to go down one of these routes, I'm afraid, and you have to prove that you are you have lots of money coming in, basically, or you have to have an EU passport. So if you have the golden ticket, the Irish passport, or you're married to an EU citizen, or you already have Italian heritage and you can get the Italian passport or something like that, then that gives you access, the free rights of movement that we had prior to Brexit. And then you can come and go as you please within the 183 days without declaring fiscal residency.
Okay, so perhaps if we go through those one by one, those different pieces. Very quickly, in terms of the work visa, that isn't something that you can apply for. That's a matter of you have to have the job and the employer apply to that. Is that right?
Very much so, yeah. So if you want to come over to Spain and work, then you have to have the job offer on the table. You have to be qualified for that job. The employer has to have the offer letter and has to prove that that job cannot be filled by an EU citizen, a Spanish citizen or an EU citizen. So it's basically known as a high qualification visa. We've done a couple of those visas, scientific projects, things like that. So they are highly sought after, but highly qualified people get those. There's also certain criteria to that. So earning over 45,000, 50,000 euros a year, etc., etc. And then it's only the person that is being offered the job that gets that. And then we have to go for family reunification to bring the employee to bring their family over on that. So it's quite a convoluted visa in that, but you have to jump through hoops in order to get that one. So if you're thinking of moving over with your family and you want to go and, I don't know, work in Marks and Spencer's or the version of Marks and Spencer's in Spain, or get a job behind a bar or something like that, unfortunately, that's not going to work. You can't do that anymore. That doesn't exist for British people.
Okay, well, let's move on to the non-lucrative visa, which is probably one of the most common ways that people come over. And essentially, the non-lucrative visa, if I could sort of give a brief outline, it will then give the opportunity for Joanne to point out when I get it wrong. But the non-lucrative visa is available to anybody who can support themselves financially. It's very commonly used for people who want to retire to Spain as an option for other people who plan not to work in Spain. But you do have to demonstrate you can support yourself, and you cannot access the Spanish healthcare, so you have to have private health policy to obtain that visa. The financial requirements in Spain are quite high, in that you have to have at least 27,792 euros and 96 cents a year for an individual, and 34,741 and 20 cents for a couple. And then each independent is an extra 6,948 and 24 cents. So that's based upon the IPREM, and it's a multiple of that. And it's much higher than a lot of other countries. So, for instance, in the old days, Spain was a natural destination for people who might be basing themselves on a UK state pension and not a lot more. Those sort of people, I'm afraid, do no longer require. Whereas in Portugal, the rates are much lower, and so generally you would be able to qualify to move to Portugal. So the sun is still available, but sadly not in Spain. So Joanne, if you could, is there anything to add to that, and could you perhaps outline the process and requirements for the non-lucrative visa?
Yeah. It's commonly referred to as the retirement visa because it does what it says on the tin. It's a non-lucrative visa. So the clue there is you cannot be working. All right. But a lot of people also get mixed up in the fact that it means you can't be earning. All right. And what you can be doing is you can rent your property out in the UK. It means that you can have passive income. So you could be having regular income coming in. So you could have a limited company, for example, in the UK, but you cannot be working in that company. But you could be drawing down dividends from that company on a regular basis. So as long as you're not working in that company, or as long as you're renting a property out in the UK, but you're not working renting that property out, so it's just income that's arriving in without you doing anything, then that's passive income. And that is perfectly acceptable to go towards you obtaining the non-lucrative visa. You can also have stocks and shares, money coming in from that. You can have pension income coming in. Obviously, that's private pensions as well as your public pension. Excuse me. Savings. If you are fortunate enough to have rich parents and they're paying you money on a monthly basis, that comes into it as well. Alimony fees or things like that anything like that goes towards the non-lucrative visa. So it isn't just a pension visa for retired people. It is for anybody. It's just a case of managing your finances in order to fit the criteria of what they want. Now, you'll see on lots of the forums as well, a lot of people will say that this is for people that are working online, and that this is how they get to move to Spain. That has happened in the past. However, it's not actually a visa for that. And if you're caught doing that, you will have the visa revoked. So bear that in mind, but people have done that. All right. So it's something that just be very careful if you're planning on doing that, because if they see that that's what you're doing, the visa will be revoked and it won't get renewed. You're very correct with your pricing there, with your quote of your price, the quote of the figures there, Nigel. So I'm very impressed. Well done, sir. For those of you that heard Nigel quote the IPREM, IPREM, that is the base rate of what Spain views as being the minimum amount of money coming in. And then they charge, what they do is they times that by 400%. And that's where they come up with that figure of 27,792.96. And that's what they expect you to be for the first person applying for a non-lucrative visa. They expect that person to bring in. What they expect to see, they're not expecting that to be in bulk in one bank account. That can be split over bank accounts. That doesn't have to be in a Spanish bank account. That can be in an American bank account, in an English bank account, in a Scottish bank account. It can be anywhere. It can be in Timbuktu. They just need to see it in funds somewhere. It can also mean that if you have it, for example, in rental income coming in, it can be income coming in on a regular basis, as long as it's passive income. So it doesn't have to be a lump sum. All right. What it needs to see, they need to see that if over the course of 12 months, it would add up to 27,792.96 for the first person. That would be enough and you would qualify for that visa. Okay, so bear that in mind. And then for every other person that's going to be attached to that visa, you would need 6,948.24. All right, so just keep adding on. Now, for the visa, there's a number of criteria that you will need to have in order to obtain the visa. The first and most important is no criminal records. Okay, so if you do have a criminal record, then make sure that it has expired. So it's no older than 5 years old. And that depends on the severity of the record that you have. We have recently had a visa turned down for a driving offence. Okay, now a driving offence, it was quite a severe driving offence. It was driving without insurance, and there was something else on it as well. It wasn't a speeding ticket or anything like that. So, but just be aware of that. You also mustn't be prohibited from entering Spain for any previous. So if you have been in what's called an irregular state, so if you've overstayed previously your 90 days out of 180, that can have an effect on any future application you make for your non-lucrative visa. So this is where your decisions now can affect you in the future. So be wise. You must prove you've got sufficient economic funds, which is what we've just covered there with the amount of money that you have. And for family relationships, you must prove the relationship. So if you are going as a family, you don't have to prove that you are married if you're not married, but you do have to prove relationship. So you don't actually have to be married, but there must be longevity. So go to a solicitor and swear that you are in a relationship, show that your both names are on the deeds of the house that you may be just selling in the UK or that you're renting out together, show that you're on the council tax together, do a sworn declaration, like I just said. So photos, we've put loads of photos in. Facebook posts, we're doing that at the moment for one of our American clients. So that's showing the Facebook post going back 6 years to show that they are actually in this relationship. So there's lots of things that we can do to show that they are in the relationship, so that they're getting it in as a unit, to show spousal relationship. Dependent children, etc. If there's children involved, then we must have the certificate, the birth certificate, and it must be the long certificate, not just the short certificate. So it needs to show both parents' names on the certificate. You will also need a comprehensive health insurance policy. Okay. And if you're retirement age, then you can have the S1, but I think we're covering that. Yeah. You also need a clean health certificate, and that's what you get from, you can speak to your GP in the UK, or if you're not from the UK, then your GP in your home country. And the clean health certificate means that it's a certificate stating that you don't carry any infectious diseases or anything that can cause a worldwide pandemic. How apt in today's age. So some GPs charge for that and other GPs give it for free. So it's worthwhile asking that question up front. And you will also need to get everything apostille stamped, which is the Hague Convention stamp, and then translated into Spanish. But we have a full checklist of all of these things that you need to do before you do these applications. And then bear in mind, before you do any application to either of the 3 embassies, consulates in the UK, there is a time frame on all of the documents that you apply for. Everything has a time frame of 3 months. Everything has a validity of 3 months in Spain. That's including your marriage certificate if you get one. So even though you got married in 1986, for example, they don't want that certificate. They want to see an up-to-date certificate. So you have to request one from your local registry office, which just proves that your marriage is still valid. But you must do that within the 90 days prior to your interview at the embassy. All right. So everything in Spain has a shelf life of 90 days. And that's something that's really important to bear in mind. So all of these things, like I say, we have a checklist that you can use in order to cross off and tick that you've got copies and copies and copies and copies, because everything in Spanish bureaucracy wants copies. Never go anywhere without a copy. Okay. So that's your non-lucrative visa. And yeah, you'll need to have, it's fun.
So how long how long does it normally take to get a decision? So how long should people allow for?
Once the application goes in, the guys in the embassies, we work with them on a daily basis, and we've got a really good relationship with them now. So once the application goes in, we tend to get responses back within about 2 weeks to 5 weeks, dependent on the rush that's on at the time. So they're really quite quick. We've had applications back within like 3 days, 4 days. At the moment, there is a strike on in the immigration offices in the embassies. So they are still honouring the appointments that have been made, but the turnaround time is a little bit longer. So it'll probably take 5 to 6 weeks at the moment. But yeah, they're working with us. They're working, and they're fine. So,
okay, let's just cover off a couple of questions we've had in. If you have the required passive income, can you live comfortably in Spain as a couple?
Yeah, more than comfortably. I mean, everything's relative. Could I? No way. No, I'm joking. Everything is good. Everything is relative. So it's all down to you and how you live. There is, if you speak to me after the webinar, I will pass, I'm sure, Nigel, you've got one on your site as well, but there is a website where you can do a comparison for the price of bread in Lanzarote to the price of bread in Malaga to the price of bread in Alicante, and milk and eggs and cheese and things like that. And it's updated constantly. So that will give you a really good idea of the price of living. But
yes, there's a site called Numbeo.
Numbeo, that's the one.
Which you can do that. There are others, but that's
the one I was referring to. I just couldn't think of the name of it. It's actually really good just to give you a brief idea of things like that. And again, it's same in the UK, isn't it? Petrol's like that, then it's like that, and well, it's mostly like that at the moment. So, but yeah, we all have menu of the day, which roughly is, at the moment about 11 to 15 euros a day, 11 to 15 euros for a 3-course meal with wine and bread. So, it's life is great over here. And what you save on, what you have your council tax and things like that in the UK, which is extortionate and really expensive. And we have electricity tends to be more expensive over here, but we don't use as much of it. So everything really does balance out. And grand scheme of things, cost of living is far less over here than it is in the UK. So yes, you would comfortably live, and you're much more outdoors over here.
Yeah, I would say that if you can live on that income in the UK, you could definitely live on it.
100%.
Yeah,
100%. Yeah.
Okay, and another one here is I'm an Irishman living in the UK. I have an Irish passport. I'm looking to move to Spain next year.
Yeah.
How does it work when I'll be working for and paid by a UK company while living in Spain?
Well, you are still under pre-Brexit rules. You're an EU citizen. So you can come over and stay as long as you like. If you stay in Spain for over 183 days, you'll be classed as fiscally resident. So you then have to sign on to the EU residency register, where as British citizens, we get the TIE card. If I show you, I'll show you mine, or I'll show you my daughter's. The TIE card is a hard plastic credit card style card, which has fingerprints on it and your ID card. And the pre-Brexit card, which is the rest of the EU card, is a green flimsy piece of paper card. And that's what you would get as an EU citizen. That gives you the right to freedom of movement throughout the whole of the Schengen zone, the whole of the EU zone, and you can work from day one. Yeah, you're sitting pretty. You're really, really good. Basically, you're able to your duty is your legal duty is to declare your taxes in Spain after 183 days. So you need to take on a gestor, which is a legal representative, a tax representative, to file the taxes on your behalf. And if you're still, so did you say, sorry, you were still working in the UK?
We're working for a company, in a UK company.
Okay, so if you're working for the UK company, I take it you'll be like a digital nomad or working online or something like that. They can still pay you into a UK bank account, but officially you should be declaring your earnings in Spain and paying the difference in tax to Spain. But your gestor, who's a tax advisor, would give you your tax advice. Tax in Spain is very different to tax in the UK. And there's no one size fits all by any stretch of the imagination. Everything is individual. So you do need to speak to a qualified tax advisor. I'm residency, I'm immigration. Tax would send me completely great. So we can put you in contact with tax people. I think, is it tomorrow you've got?
Yes, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, they would give you better advice on that, because yeah, I'd be in an early grave if I had to give you all that information as well, I'm afraid.
Yes, so I think it's worth saying that one of the key differences between the non-lucrative visa and the golden visa is that a non-lucrative visa, you have to be resident, so you have to spend more than 180 days in the country, which means that you become tax resident, so you pay tax in Spain
100%.
on your worldwide income, not just your Spanish income. So we'll go into more detail tomorrow, but that's...
Yeah, you are declaring a non-lucrative visa. The actual application process for the non-lucrative visa starts in the UK at the embassy or at the consulate, and is a visa that is put into your passport. That is a visa, okay? You then have 90 days to move out to Spain. Otherwise, the visa is cancelled. Now, within those 90 days, you have to move to Spain and you have to declare your residency. And once you declare your residency, that's when we get that TIE card that I just showed you. And that's where we have to go to the foreigners office in whichever area of Spain you're moving to, and we get the TIE card. And one of the qualifying restrictions or criteria of getting the non-lucrative visa is to maintain residency in Spain. And that means declaring fiscal residency. So you must be in Spain for over 183 days of the year, okay? And that means declaring your worldwide income and expenditure. Expenditure, that's declaring your worldwide income and assets, okay? So that is, you have to have that information with regards to your tax before you make the move. It's vitally important that you're completely and utterly informed on those issues.
Right.
But don't be scared by it. A lot of financial advisors, and I'm sure, Gladden's Franks tomorrow will give you all the information, but please don't be scared by it, because they talk percentages and da. it can scare the pants off you, but please don't let it, because when you start looking at it in real terms, it's not as scary as you think. You know, put it into your terms that you're looking at in the UK and you think, oh, actually, it's just 1% difference we're talking about here. So it's not hugely different. And then you take into effect the cost of living and everything's much better. And I would normally say, you know, we have the sun here and everything's lovely, but not today.
Just before we leave the non-lucrative visa, there's initially the first visa is for a year, and then I understand you can renew it for 2 years, and then further 2 years, and then after that you can apply. You get permanent residence.
That's right. One of the things I want to get across to people, like you hear all these horror stories of how you must have, at the end of your first year, it's renewed for 2 years. And I'm hearing all these horror stories of how you've got to have 2 years worth of funds in your bank account for when it's renewed for 2 years. No, you don't. You have to have the same amount in your bank account for when it's renewed for 2 years. So the criteria for getting the golden visa, the non-lucrative visa, when you apply at year 1 is the same for when you get the renewal. You've just got to maintain that status quo, and then you will get the renewal. Okay. So if you've got the non-lucrative visa, sorry, and you are having your monthly passive income going in from rentals of €2,316, for example, for the first person just going in on a monthly basis for a rental. If you're showing that that's stable and that's going in regardless, then that will just get renewed because you are maintaining your part of the bargain. If you had 27,792, call it €30,000 for ease. If you have that in a bank account and it's not been touched, it will be renewed for a further 2 years because it's not been touched. So you are maintaining your part of the bargain. So please don't worry when you read people saying you've got to have 60,000 or 70,000 for 2 years in there. You don't. All right. I've been doing this for many, many years, not just for Brits. I've been doing it for Americans, Australians, Canadians who've had to comply with this since the year dot. All right. They've never been part of the Schengen zone. So they've always had to comply with these criteria. We've never had to have 2 years worth of funds in the bank account in order to get these visas. So please don't listen to the forums. Please speak to experts like me who have been doing this for many, many years. I've done 2,000 applications.
Yes, that is a point I made. One of the things that I see all the time, I mean, I'm a member of various Facebook groups, expat groups in Spain and so on. And what you find is people looking for quite technical questions into those forums. And what happens is you get sort of 15, 20 responses, of which 1 or 2 of them get it right. You know, it is pointless to ask those sort of detailed questions in those forums. You need to do it.
What we've found, Nigel, as well, is because the staff in the embassy in the UK have never actually processed renewals themselves up until very recently, when they're reading the text, they themselves didn't know the answers. So it's been difficult for them. And it's also, so in some of the cases, we've been actually advising them and they're going through to immigration in Madrid and getting the same responses as us. So it's, as what we've been telling them. So it's been a learning curve for them as well, you know, and a lot of the advisors who historically have been helping with EU residencies have been switching over to help with non-lucs, and they've never done it before. So when you read Spanish legal text, it's very in-depth, and they can be interpreting it slightly different, and we're going off experience as well. So it's a learning curve for a lot of people, and there is ambiguity involved. So it's just a case of having to fight the corner.
Okay, well, let's move on to golden visa in a moment, but I've just got one other question here. It's what happens if you got married in Jamaica, by which I assume that mean getting hold of the marriage certificate. Presumably, if you got married in Jamaica and the marriage certificate is there, you've got to get it from Jamaica. I think.
Thank you for that. Great fun. I'm actually going to Jamaica in 4 weeks. 4 weeks today. So let's have a chat about that. Okay, so we deal with lots of people who've been married in all different places. The only place so far, well, 2 places on earth that we really struggle with, South Africa and Mauritius. we cannot, and probably Russia now, we cannot get certificates from South Africa or Mauritius. If you've been, we actually have had a certificate from Jamaica. They're actually quite good, the Jamaican consulate or the Jamaican embassy. So that's not too bad. They are quite quick, funnily enough. You just need to write through to them. If you have a wedding planner that was working with you, they will be able to get that certificate for you and send it through. But if you have been married overseas, to anybody else that's interested in that, write to your wedding planner or write to the governor or the consulate of the country that you got married in and request them to send through the certificate. If you're not getting any response, then if you go to a solicitor in the UK or a notary, preferably a notary in the UK, and do a sworn declaration that you are a couple, that you got married on this day at this time in this country, and then provide other proof that you are a couple and that in the UK it is a valid marriage, that will suffice. We just need as much bump as possible to prove that you are a valid unit. Okay, and we can then use that to justify you as a spousal couple when we're doing an application. Because bearing in mind, when we make a non-lucrative or any other type of visa as a spousal, the fees are down. When we make them as two individuals, then it's 27,792 per person. So we want to get as much of that to prove that you are a unit as possible to bring those fees down.
Right, okay. But then let's move on to the Golden Visa. Now, the Golden Visa is available to all non-EU citizens, which obviously includes Brits now, who make a significant investment in Spain. There are things such as investing in Spanish shares, in depositing government bonds and so on, but those are very quite high amounts you have to do and are not as common as the investment in property. In terms of investment in property, the requirement is to invest 500,000 euros, and that can be in a single property, several properties, or whatever. The property can be used as your home or as an investment property. And the great thing about the Golden Visa is that it gives you the right, but not the obligation to move to Spain. So what that means is that if you want to stay under the 183 days for tax purposes, you can have a Golden Visa and spend up to 183 days, not restricted by 90 at a time. You can spend whichever period you want there. But it does effectively mean simply that you can spend 180 in 365 rather than 90 in 180. So if you want to, if you go over 180, then you will become resident, and in which case, you would get the non-lucrative visa without having that requirement to invest in property probably as easily. So it's a great visa if you don't want to spend all of your time in Spain. And there are various options, as I say, other than property, but property is by far the most common. So, sort of focusing on the property, what are the requirements, and what's your experience of dealing with this visa?
Okay, well, firstly, one of the big myths is that you have to buy. You have to invest just in one property. No, you don't. You can spread that investment over a number of properties. So if you want to invest in smaller properties and then rent those properties out, then that's quite acceptable, which is a great way of making income off those properties. One of the things that we find over here, and it really galls me, is so far this year, we're in middle of March, and we've probably dealt with maybe 6 or 7 where people have taken the wrong advice with Golden Visas, and they're buying property 500,000 euros plus, which is what the minimum investment is into property in Spain. And they're purchasing it as a couple. And you have to purchase it in one person's name only. It has to be a clear investment in one person's name only in order to obtain that Golden Visa. And we've had 5 or 6 cases already so far this year where they've purchased it as a couple, and that immediately means you cannot get that visa. So it's a waste of money immediately. And that is really, it really is and that's solicitors, that's lawyers and estate agents giving the wrong advice straight away. So it's so important to make sure that that message is getting out to people before they make that investment. Now, it's not the end of the world. It can be rectified, but it's costly. And so it's a costly mistake to make. So yeah, the number one thing here is, quite rightly, Nigel, as you've said, is the investment needs to be made €500,000. Once you've made that investment, it needs to be made in one person's name. Then anybody who is directly related to that investor, ascendant, so parents, or descendant, so children, or spousal, can be covered by that visa and then can travel in and out of Spain. The minimum requirement is 1 day a year. And then you can travel freely at will in and out of Spain. You don't have to become resident. It's a golden visa. Again, same as the non-lucrative visa, but with the non-lucrative visa, you are declaring residency. So part of the criteria of that is you must become a resident. With the golden visa, you do not have to become a resident. So you can, but bear in mind, if you stay in Spain for more than 183 days a year, then you are duty bound to become fiscally resident and declare your earnings and your worldwide assets in Spain, because then you have to comply with Spanish residency rules and regulations. So again, you need to take proper financial advice on that one. But yeah, it's by far and away, the non-lucrative and the golden visa are the two visas that keep us the busiest. That's what we do the most of.
Okay, and so in terms of the property, not only do you have to buy it, but you have to keep it. And so
for the duration of the visa, yeah, you have to keep it until, if you declare residency, then you have to keep it for the length of your residency visa until you become a permanent residency at the end of 5 years. And then at the end of the 5 years, you can then get rid of it, because you then have permanent residency. And once you have permanent residency, there's no criteria from permanent residency. You can sell all your assets and you can just skip happily through the streets.
Okay, and so with the golden visa, do you also have to prove financial independence in the same way as you do for non-lucrative?
Absolutely. So once you've made the investment, you still have to prove that you can live over here and that you won't be a drain on the Spanish state. So the same applies to funding on your day-to-day life. So the 27,792, I'm going to call it 30,000 euros because that's nice and easy to say. The 30,000 euros for the first applicant plus the 7,000 euros per applicant afterwards, that's going to be included on that visa, that needs to be proved on a yearly basis.
Right. Okay, and the visa is, how long is it initially valid for?
So here's the difference with the golden visa to the non-lucrative visa. There are a couple of fees that are attached to the different visas. When we go, for the non-lucrative visa, we have to apply for that in your home country, which in our case today, for ease of purpose, is going to be the UK. We have to apply for that at the embassy in the UK, and you have to pay £516, which is an embassy fee per person, per applicant, to the embassy. Okay. With the golden visa, we don't have to apply for this visa until you've made the investment into Spain. Once we've made that investment, we can then apply for the visa in Spain. And when we do that, we apply in Spain to the Spanish Golden Visa Department. We only pay once, and we pay €72 to the Golden Visa Department. All right, so a massive savings straight away. Then once that's applied and it's issued, we then go straight away. If we're going to get residency, we go straight away to the TIE process, and that will give us a TIE card, which is €12.90 or something, which is an application fee, a catasta, it's called, a tax, which we apply, which is a fee that we have to pay to the Spanish government. So massive savings. That's issued, and it's issued for 2 years straight away. So it's there's a big difference on the way that they issue these visas, and dependent on where we apply for them. If we apply from the UK for the golden visa, it will be issued for 1 year, and it's £1,700 to apply for it. So we always say, let's just wait, do your investment in Spain, and then we'll apply in the UK, then we'll apply in Spain.
Right. Okay, and another cost which I'll mention is the cost of legal or representative fees. So one of the things that I've come across is that, lawyers can charge 1,000 to 1,500 for applying for GOV visas, for non-lucrative visas. And the reality is that there are not heavy legal issues involved. Generally, it's purely a process of applying and knowing your way through the system. So I know you do not charge quite so much.
No, we don't. No. We recently had a client who was charged, €5,000 for the whole process, whereas we charge €500 per applicant. So if most of our applicants are 500, a couple, so it's €1,000. So it's literally, we charge per applicant, and that's basically, there's quite a bit of paperwork involved. So it's more administrative fees and things like that. So yeah, we can save quite a lot of time, and we are qualified in immigration. So we're not just somebody on the street who's decided that they want to do it. We have done all of our immigration. We've done the same courses that the solicitors have done. We're not solicitors, because I've got no interest in standing in court. Thank you very much. So yeah, that's basically.
Okay, so we had a question which I think you'd like, Joan, which is how do they get in contact you? And the answer is that you can either go to aldertons.es and find contact details there, or you can call email us at expats@expatnetwork.com. So if you want to speak, have any questions, then that's there.
For all the clients, if you just come through Nigel, and we'll send you through the brochure as well, which has got all the checklist and all the details about the visas that we put together for you as well. So it's all there.
Okay, perhaps we could then mention the Padron. Perhaps you could explain to people what's involved with the Padron.
So the Padron is basically, it's like a census. It's a town hall census, and it's something that you have to do when you move to Spain, is sign on at the town hall for a number of things. Firstly, it lets the town hall know how many people are living in the town, and they need to know this because they apply to central government for the funding. So based on per capita, they will get funding from central government for services such as bus routes and ambulance services and things like that. Also from the Padron, if you need to apply for anything yourself, so say you are going onto the healthcare system, or say you want to buy a car, or whatever it is in day-to-day life over here, then you'll be required to produce your Padron, which shows that you are living in that town. And then thirdly, in order to get your residency, then you need to show that you have signed on to the Padron in order to show that you are immersed into the system over here and you've followed the correct procedure. So the Padron is very serious. It's something, it's not like Big Brother is watching you, but it is something that you do have to do in order to comply with residency procedures over here.
And it's relatively straightforward to apply.
Very easy. So one of the things that we do, we cover the whole of Spain when it comes to residency applications, but specifically if you move into the East Coast and you move into the northern Costa Blanca, then we actually hold your hand through it all, because we're very passionate about introducing you to the people within the town halls and making the process personal. So this is Magdalena and this is Carmen, and you need to meet these people because it's about living and breathing Spain, you know. So yeah, so we'll tell you in much more detail what it is, but if we can't actually be there in person with you, we'll make the appointments for you and we'll talk you through it while you're there, and you know, explain in much further detail what it is that you're doing and why you're doing it. But yeah, it's something that you do have to do, and you have to update it. Towns vary from region to region, but in our region, we need to update it once every 2 to 3 years, make sure that it's still live, because you can fall off the Padron. And in typical Spanish bureaucracy style, they'll change the rules themselves and say, oh, no, it's going to be every 3 years you need to update it, but they won't tell us. They won't tell the citizens that you need to do that. So we try and keep on top of all those things and let you know about that.
Okay. Yes, and you also, as I've experienced, you have to change your address on the padron if you move apartment or villa or whatever.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
it's very straightforward. I mean, you just pop in and
it's like the electoral roll in the UK. It's your responsibility to make sure that the authorities are aware of your movements, of your updated details. So you wouldn't move house and not let your bank and your bank account, your bank know that you haven't moved house. It's the same type of thing. Let them know where you are, because they need to be able to get in touch with you for anything serious.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, continuing on the sort of bureaucracy, if you like, driving in Spain, perhaps if we could just go on to that. And now that we're not part of the EU, British people have to exchange their UK licenses for Spanish licenses, and that's after 6 months, I believe, after you get here.
Yes.
People who were here before Brexit have until June, I think, is the latest extension, isn't it?
Yeah.
To change it, because they keep moving it back. The intention is to come to an arrangement by which we have reciprocal arrangements whereby you can change your driving license without having to take driving tests and so on. But that has not yet been agreed, which is why this sort of requirement keeps being pushed back. So anybody new coming over here has to get a Spanish driving license within 6 months, and they would have to take the test until that's agreed. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's the official stance at the moment. It's still all up in the air. When we registered, DGT is the equivalent of the DVLA in Spain. Okay, we visit the DGT on a weekly basis because we do car imports and we do driving license exchanges. So we're constantly down there at Alicante, and even the guys in the Alicante office are just so fed up to the back teeth of everything that's going on between the UK and Spain with regards to the negotiations, because they're hearing the rumours from the Spanish side and and what's going on behind the doors there. And we hear what they're telling us, and we hear obviously what's coming out of the UK consulate. And it's just crazy. We think, and we sort of know something's going to happen, but they've just, something bigger is going on, and this is being used as the pawn. Whether it's Gibraltar or God knows what, something's happening at the moment, and we don't know what. But basically, they're going to if you move over to Spain, once on the day you get your residency, your TIE card, whatever date is on the TIE card as your residency, you have 6 months from that date to change your UK issued driving license over to a Spanish one. So you do have to take your driving test, etc., etc. Many people aren't still, because that was always the case, even prior to Brexit. That's always been the case in Spain. And we've had people over here for 30 years who have never changed their UK driving license over to a Spanish issued driving license. It's many people just never took that decision to change it. So, yeah, but it is, now that we're post-Brexit, it is one of those things that the police over here, if you're caught driving around without that license, without the Spanish issued license, there are big fines. We have had one person who had the car impounded and will not be reissued with it until they've got the test done and the licensing. So these are all things, these are decisions that you need to take, and take them wisely.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a difficult one to think, because we are pretty hopeful. I'd like to say confident, but whenever I say things like that, I'm touching wood. We're hopeful that they're going to come out with this exchange process.
Okay.
I'd like to say it's going to come, but I don't.
Okay. And if moving on to the car itself, there is if some people bring their British car over, obviously one of the disadvantages of that is sitting on the wrong side of the car when you get to toll booths and the like. But people do it if it's a prized a vintage car, etc. In terms of moving cars over, what are the rules there?
Okay, so again, post-Brexit, that's changed quite significantly because there are higher importation taxes and duty taxes to pay now. So that's been a side of our business that has dropped off drastically from the Brexit side of things. I think we've only done 2 or 3 maximum in the past 8 months or so, where it's something that we used to do quite regularly. It's just not really worth it now with the taxes that you do have to pay on the importation side. So the advice really is to sell your cars in the UK before you move over, and just purchase out here. The second-hand car market over here in particular is higher. It's much more expensive than it is in the UK. But that also means that when you resale at the end, it's also much higher than it is in the UK. So you've got to look at the benefits as well as the downsides of it. But then, you know, new cars, I think, are pretty much on a par with the UK, I believe. I haven't actually looked at the price of new cars in the UK, but yeah, I think it's something that you do need to look at that in detail before you move over. You can also look at leasing cars through the banks and through the dealerships over here, because that works out really well. For a Ford Fiesta, for example, through one of the banks over here, which I lease for my company, for one of the girls in the office, and we pay around €225 a month for that, and that's with the insurance included, fully comprehensive. And that's all the maintenance, wheels replaced, everything is included in that for €225 a month, and that's with 15,000 kilometers a year included. So I don't think that's too bad, and that's a brand new car, so for insurance as well. Not too bad.
And one thing to note on the insurance for cars here is that one of the big differences is it's the vehicle that is insured rather than the driver, which can be very useful when friends visit, because they can borrow your car, it's fully insured, you don't have to do anything extra. They are insured because it's the car, not the person that's insured.
It works wonderfully for us because like I say, we're going on holiday in a few weeks' time, and our nephew is coming over on holiday to look after our house, because we've got dogs, cats, rabbits, and basically a farm. And he's coming over with his girlfriend. He looks after our house while we're away, and he uses our car while he's here. And we don't have to change the insurance. We don't have to do anything. He's 25 years old. It's absolutely marvelous. And there's no excess or anything to pay. It's just wonderful. And we have clients who's, we found the house for them. They now rent that house out for holidays, and they have a car included in the holiday package. So, it's a great inclusion for their visitors. And one of the things to bear in mind is that you can have a car parked at Alicante Airport for circa €300 a year, and it has a pickup facility at the airport, where the company that looks after the car off-site brings it to the airport for you, for when you give them details of your flight, and they meet you at the airport with the key, and off you go. So, it's a fantastic service. So there's so many options for you to do, and I'm sure they have that down in Malaga and Barcelona and Palma, and it's a fabulous service.
Yeah. And then there is the experience of driving in Spain, of course, and the Spanish drivers have their little unusual behaviors, if you like, but generally I found it perfectly okay driving over here. And one thing that everybody should be aware of is that the Spaniards are taught a different way of going around a roundabout, and that is one of the biggest problems I think that comes across, because we will tend to go around the outside lane and take the first exit. Yeah. The Spaniards will go around the outside lane all the way around and back the other way. Yeah. And so you will not do it. And that is simply because that's the way they're taught. It's not because they're bad drivers, it's the way they're taught to deal with it. The rules are different. But what's your experience of driving? Is that?
So I think what you should have said there right at the beginning, Nigel, is that the Brits are taught a different way around roundabouts, because we invented roundabouts, but then the rest of the world taught roundabouts a different way to the Brits, because I think everyone else uses them completely different to the Brits, basically. They just saw it and just ignored us. I think, when you come to a roundabout in Spain, you come to the roundabout, and the idea is that everybody should be entering the roundabout from the right-hand lane, which is the right everyone drives on the right in Spain, remember that. So you should be entering the roundabout from the right-hand lane, and you should be going round the roundabout in the right-hand lane. They're basically saying that there is only one lane to use, and that the left-hand lane is simply for overtaking. So if you've got a horse and cart or a moped or an extremely slow driver, you can use that second lane for overtaking, but it's not for going right the way around to take the left-hand exit or the third exit or whatever you want to call it. So you should be just using the outside lane, regardless of which exit you want to take. So if you are coming in on that second lane and expecting to come off on the third exit, but somebody's already coming round on the outside lane and they're also expecting to come off there, and you cut in front of them, you are in the wrong. Because they're coming all the way around and they are actually right. So bear that in mind. Okay. There is only really one main lane to use on the road at all time. Any other lane is simply for overtaking. And if you want to turn off a road or a roundabout, you do it from the outside lane at all times. Bear that in mind whenever you're in Spain, and you won't go wrong. Yeah, and also bear in mind, as I found, that they do have speed cameras in the tunnels. So it is the most common. I've certainly got caught there a few times, and it is well worth bearing in mind. They're always there, and they're hot on the speed cameras in the tunnels now, and even 1 kilometre over, and they'll chase you for it now. Right. Let's move on then to healthcare. So Brits moving to Spain, can they access the state healthcare system? And is that vary according to the basis on which they're here, whether they're working or retiring and so on? Yeah. So if you're moving over to Spain and you are coming over on one of the visas and you are of retirement age, then you can now use your S1. The S1 is a form that you request from the Department of Work and Pensions in the UK. And that is a form that guarantees your access to healthcare, and it guarantees that the UK government will pay your healthcare in Spain. That means that you will then have access to the public healthcare in Spain. All right, it means you don't need private healthcare. It also means that if you are married to a pensioner, that also you will have an S1 form, and you also don't need private healthcare. All right, so you both will then have access to the public healthcare system in Spain, the NHS basically in Spain. All right. If you have, if you're on disability allowance, or if you have special needs, there are some circumstances as well where you will be eligible for an S1 in the UK. So always speak to the Department of Work and Pensions, the Overseas Healthcare Team. If you go on the gov.uk website, get the telephone number for the Overseas Healthcare Team and ask them directly, are you eligible for an S1? And they're very helpful in that department, and they will run through all of the information with you. We can't do that on your behalf, unfortunately. You have to speak to them direct, and they'll run through everything with you. And if you are eligible for an S1, then that's fantastic. If not, then you have to get private healthcare. Okay. Now, if you're working here on a work visa, then you will be paying Social Security, and then you would also be eligible for access. You have access to the to the public healthcare. Yeah. And then the Convenio Especial, the state insurance scheme, how does that work? So the Convenio Especial is a system that's set up over here, which allows you to pay into the NHS, the public health system over here. You're only eligible to access that system once you've been residents over here for a full 12 months. So you have to have completed a full 12 months before you can even apply. And once you apply, it takes about 3 to 6 months before they accept you into the system. So there are criteria for you to be accepted into the system, and then you pay between 60 and 100 euros a month to actually get into it. So it's the equivalent of private healthcare, really. But it is basically then, there's no, what's the word I'm looking for? not allowances.
No, there's no exclusions.
Exclusions. Thank you very much. Sometimes I forget what words I'm looking for in English. I go into the Spanish. Yeah, there's no exclusions from the Convenio Especial. So if you do have pre-existing conditions, or if you've diabetes, or you've had cancer or a heart attack or something like that, that's not excluded. So they do cover you for that. One of the things that is that you do need to bear in mind on Convenio Especial, however, is that you do pay for your prescriptions. So it can get costly if you're diabetic, for example, and you're having quite a bit of monthly, prescriptions being paid out, then that, you can be upwards of 40, 50 quid a month on your prescriptions being paid out to you. Likewise, if you've got anything else going on.
Right, okay. So what about bank accounts? How easy is it to open a bank account? Can you open them before you get here, or what happens? So
the banks are getting tighter and tighter. It used to be very easy to open the bank accounts, but Spanish banks are a pain in the derriere, I'm going to say. There's not many very good ones. I'm sure you've been on forums yourselves and heard horror stories about the banks. There's good and there's bad in all the banks. It's all really down to the bank managers or the bank teller. If you find a good one, stick with them. But yeah, it can be easy to open a bank account online. Many of them have non-resident bank accounts. That's the first thing. So if you go on a forum and say they wouldn't let me open a bank account, it's probably because that person hasn't specified they want a non-resident account, because they'll say no straight away if they've not specified that, because the person that they're speaking to on the other end will automatically assume it's a residence account, so they'll say no. So you have to specify non-resident first. Once you've become a resident, you can switch it over to a residence account. So yes, many of them do these days have online accounts that you can open from your home countries. They can be quite expensive, non-residence accounts, and there is absolutely no reason to open a Spanish bank account until you've found a property and until you're in the position that you need to actually transfer funds over, which tends to be after you've bought the property. So save your money. You really don't need to be in that position to open the bank account and transfer funds. You can use an online Forex company to hold your money until you're in that position. The only reason you need a Spanish bank account is to set up direct debits in order to pay your utilities. So save your money to start off with, because they do charge you. They charge you for absolutely everything in Spain. So that's my advice at the moment, is save your money. Use an account like Revolut, where you can change your finances for everyday payments to set up your, if to paying pounds or dollars or euros. I've used mine constantly. It's fantastic for things like that. And you have a card what you can use when you're over here and stuff. Brilliant. So things like that are absolutely worth the weight in gold. And then once you're over and you've found your house, then set up your Spanish bank account, meet the people behind, sat behind the desk in the banks, and find who you get the natural affinity with. Don't be shepherded into a bank just to open an account with someone because they're going to get a €15 kickback or something like that, because that's not worth it, because then you're paying high fees.
Okay. Yes, one of the sort of peculiarities, I think it's reasonably common across the banks, but certainly with the one I'm using, is that rather than a debit card and a credit card, there is one card. And if I use it in a shop, then it goes against the credit. And if I'm getting cash out of the bank, then it comes out of the debit card.
Yeah.
The problem with that is that even if you've got lots of money in your current account, the credit is for 1 month. And if you run out halfway through the month, you've got to go back to the bank and top it up before you can use it, which is just one of those sort of like irritations that you think, why don't you just separate the credit and the debit card?
It's so frustrating. I'm with Sabadell. Is that the Sabadell account?
No, that's Acacia.
Acacia, yeah. I left Acacia because of that. And I'm with Sabadell, and they tried to introduce that, and I obviously went in and had a bit of a chat with them about that. But Sabadell gets slated, and I've changed one of the accounts that I had with Sabadell to something else, and that's now working quite well. But now I have a business, and if clients of mine pay me from their UK account, into my Spanish account, they charge me €18 to receive the money because it's come from a UK account every time. And I have no way around that. So I'm about to change that. But the Spanish banks are, honestly, it's a pain. But out of all of the banks at the moment, Sabadell have been the best one for me. And I left La Caixa, but I'm in talks with all the others. So, you know, I'm very honest about the banks. They're all a bad bunch, but I get on very well with my bank manager in Sabadell. He's worked really well for me, and he's a very nice guy. So I'm a people person. I like to work with people.
Well, certainly going back to the sort of Facebook groups,
Yeah.
so one of the things you see constantly on bank accounts is some people saying they've had a terrible experience with a particular bank,
Exactly.
and then another whole raft of people saying they've had a wonderful experience with the same bank. So it is very difficult. But anyway, so let's move on then to the internet. Obviously, you know, with Expat Network, I run an internet business. The first thing I did was started to rent a villa in a area called La Plana in Javier, and there was virtually no internet. So for several months, I had to sort of try different things, and eventually got the 3G, the Wi-Fi internet, and it wasn't great, but it worked okay. In the office I have 300 megabits a second, which is great, but up there I had about 8 megabits a second, which was there. So in terms of internet generally in Spain, my comment would be it's extremely variable as to where you are, and so on, a very key point to decide on where you're living. Is that your experience?
Yeah, it certainly was the experience. Not so much these days. It's becoming, it's much better now. Movistar, Telefonica have now got I think it's 2025. They have they sort of own most of the cables throughout Spain, and they have I'm going into Spanish again now. It's a meta. That's a target. Thank you very much. They have a target to have Spain covered with super fast, high speed internet, including the rural areas. Now, certainly along this coastline, including a lot of the rural areas. Now, there might be a few dips in a couple of the sort of valleys where it's not hitting just yet. But certainly along this entire coastline where I am, it's absolutely ferocious, the internet that we have here. I'm on download speeds of about 500 megabytes a second and upload speeds of 400. So it's great. And in the office, I'm in Benissa Town, and it's fantastic. So we don't have any issues at all. I work with a lot of clients where they go for country houses. So that's something that we always check when we're on country houses, because that's quite pivotal. Like you, Nigel, a lot of my clients are internet based, and I've worked with a lot of Americans. So there's a lot of people that work, you know, overseas, and obviously at different times of the day, they're all over the show. And that's, very, very important. And even if we haven't got the fiber, then we're on satellite and things like that. And we have backup systems put in and things. And we've never had any issues now at all. So
okay, well, I mean, I moved from La Plana down into the town, and sadly, I managed to find a fairly small street which has not yet been put onto the cable, and so it's
in Javier?
Yeah, so it's ADSL and so on. So I've had to use a 4G router, which gives me 40 megabits a second, which is fine, but it varies with the weather. So it's they told us when we took it up a year ago that it was weeks or months away, and a year on it's still not arrived. But
wow.
So it is. There are still areas that sneak away from it, but as you say, generally it's not a problem. But it is well worth checking if you are moving somewhere what is available, because sometimes one side of the street is okay and the other side of the street is not, for some historical reasons and so on.
You need me on the case, love. That's what you need. You need me on the case. I'll be there.
Okay. So the other side of it that's perhaps worth mentioning is UK TV. Again, one of my glorious mistakes. When I first arrived, I tried to get Sky, and was initially advised, got an enormous dish placed on the villa, and then because it was an old card and so on, and the other one I had was the latest, was it Sky Plus or whatever, I forget what they're called now, but it didn't work. So eventually I discovered the joys of IPTV, which is basically internet via TV, and now I get every Sky channel, every UK channel, enormous number of Norwegian, Dutch, and other channels as well, and for a relatively small sum each month and so on. If you do try to get UK TV, then you sometimes need a VPN, but the IPTV mine comes from Cyprus, for instance. It's not necessarily entirely compliant with the regulations, but that, if you like, is the provider's issue rather than the user's issue. So if you're content with that slightly grey area, that works. But otherwise, you need, I think, a VPN to get the UK TV. What do you find that generally a problem people come across?
Yeah, I mean, every single house that we find for clients, we put basically the same system in for all of them now. I have, well, we have the fibre or we have the satellite TV, whichever they go for. And then we install the VPN onto a separate router, which scrambles, basically, if people don't know what VPN is, it scrambles the internet into the house, so that they think they have two internet basically coming in, one that still thinks it's in Spain, and then another one that thinks it's in the UK or wherever they set it to. And then the one that thinks it's in the UK, they set that. I have an Apple, I'll show you just one second, because funnily enough, excuse me, oops, I actually have one set up to go into a client's house later this afternoon. I have an Apple TV box, just like this, which we've set up to go onto a client's house. And this will be installed into their TV. And on this box, we have a BBC iPlayer, ITV, Channel 4 catch-up, all those things are installed on that box, along with Netflix and Prime and all the rest of it. So they then can watch everything that they want on there. So you can have IPTV. Personally, I'm not a big fan of IPTV because I don't like the layout on the screen. It's too messy for me, plays with my OCD. So I like the little boxes, and then I can just go into whichever one that I want. And then we also have, there's a UK TV Play, it's called, which is an app on there, which sets it up so that it looks very nice and neat on the TV. So it looks like a normal TV channel, so you can scroll through and see what's on that evening, on that day, and a bit like the TV guide. So yeah, it's all nice and easy, and that basically costs, well, our VPN costs us about €90 for 4 years, and then the iPlayer and everything else, whatever you subscribe to. So I subscribe to ITV because I don't like the adverts, and then Netflix and everything is $7.99 or whatever a month. So whatever it's all your packages. What Nigel has, whatever he pays for that, and he gets everything under the sun. But like I say, it's a bit too messy for me on my TV screen. I'm a bit OCD. Sorry, Nigel.
No, well, I mean, just to emphasise that you can get UK TV.
Absolutely.
And there are various ways of doing it.
Yeah, there's loads.
I think the days of a straightforward Sky dish are probably...
yeah, you don't need the big ugly Sky dish on the side of the thing. And we do actually still have the dish on the side of our house. We haven't taken it down yet. And I've still got about 6 months to run on my Sky package. Andrew, my husband, he's still a bit old school, so he likes switching onto it because it's got the football on it still. But basically, as at the moment with our bad weather, the Sky literally cuts out all the time in bad weather and stuff like that. Whereas when you're on the fibre and the IPTV and Apple TV and stuff, never gets, yeah, it's fabulous.
Yeah, and I can watch rugby on South African TV if I can't get it on Sky. So it's full of joys. Anyway, well, thank you very much, Joanne. I think we'll sort of call it a day there.
Very welcome.
No more questions. Just to say that we're here to help you. So if you have any questions, and please send them expats@expatnetwork.com if you want a referral to Joanne or to anybody else. We have a sort of wide network of partners that we work with, and happy to refer you on to them. If you're watching this as a recording and haven't been able to ask your questions, then obviously again, expats@expatnetwork.com. So I look forward to seeing you all on future ones, or not seeing you, but hearing you. Thank you and goodbye. And the cat has arrived. Thank you, Joanne.
I told you the cat would come in at some point.
Okay, thank you very much. Cheers, Joe.
Bye, everybody.
Bye all.